So good morning everyone. I'm Choli Chattopadhyay, your new educator. So this is my test video for Vedantu selection procedure. I want to be an educator at Vedantu and teach all of you English, literature and language. And specifically this video is made for CBSE class 10 aspirants who are going to sit for their boards next year. And I'd like to teach Dust of Snow by Robert Frost. So before we start the poem, I'd like to say a few words about myself. I am Chondril and I have done my masters in English from Jadavpur University, India, which is considered one of the topmost universities for studying literature. I did my bachelor's from St. Xavier's College and I passed out from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata in the year 2017 and successively my masters in 2019. Following that, I sat for UGC NET and qualified it with a 98 plus percentile. And so here I am teaching you Dust of Snow by Robert Frost. So it's a very brief poem. Before I would like to start off, I would say that it's a very, very brief poem. It's just an 8-line poem, and what you need to do right now is you need to go through the poem first before you can take a hint at how the poem translates and the poem moves from one line to another. And there are certain new figures of speech that you'll be learning in the process. So let's see the poem first. Before I start the poem, I would also like to say a little about Robert Frost. So Robert Frost was American poet, and all of you must have heard, everyone who has studied English at some point must have heard about the poem And Miles to Go Before I Sleep. So Robert Frost is the famous poet who had written His Woods Are Lovely, Dark and Deep, I Had Promises to Keep, and Miles to Go Before I Sleep, and Miles to Go Before I Sleep. So it's the same poet who's writing this poem, Dust of Snow. So as I move a little, you can see that the poem is a very short poem. So it's just an 8-line poem. It says, "The way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued." What is most interesting here is the way the words have been arranged in a poem by Robert Frost. This features in the 1923 New Hampshire set of poems, and the poet is kind of a person who has relived his life in New England, in America, and that's why this set of poems called New Hampshire poems traces a journey, a personal journey of Robert Frost. Dust of Snow, as the title suggests, dust of snow. Dust particles and snow, they're separate things, but however, the way the dust, translates and moves from one place to another, the snow has been given the same kind of characteristics. It has been given the same kind of addressing by Robert Frost. As a result, he calls it the dust of snow. If we look at the first line, we'll see it's written, "The way a crow shook down on me." Now we come to the idea. If we see a basic idea of what the poem actually means, it's like you are going through a very bad day and you are walking on a lonely road. You are standing under a hemlock tree. Hemlock tree is like a pine tree which has fruits which are very poisonous. So as a result, the entire mood that Robert Frost in the first stanza tried to portray is one that of morose, sadness, and a kind of bearing the meaning that he wanted to give up on life somehow or the other. Most of his poems speak of the same idea of giving up and then again trying to reclaim that life which is slowly slipping away from his hands. So he says, "The way a crow shook down on me the dust of snow from a hemlock tree." He says that there is a crow, and the crow has always been associated with ominous. The even Raven, when we speak about Edgar Allan Poe, if we read, when we'll be taking up literature later, will we see that Edgar Allan Poe had also written about the crow. So what is important here is the crow is always associated with something that is ominous, something that is evil. And here Robert Frost is also associating the crow with the worst day of his life. The way a crow shook down on me. So the crow was sitting on the hemlock tree, atop the hemlock tree, and the crow was, maybe it was shivering in the cold, maybe it was trying to move the dust, move the snow off its wings, and thereby it fluttered its wings, and the snow fell on Robert Frost as he was walking by. The day was a pretty bad day for him because he constantly uses the word rude. He constantly uses the word has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rude. So this change of mood, slowly transgresses from that is sad, that is hopeless, to one that is, full of life, or if not full of life, at least transitioning towards that life that he has somehow, that the enjoyment of which he has lost somehow. Two important things are saved and root here. So save, we can say that the mankind has been saved from all the sadness, from all the evils by Jesus. So the saved can be a connotation to Jesus, and somehow the crow came in, even if it's in its evilish avatar, because it's all generally associated with what we call ominous or evil, but it came and saved some part of the day. Like, his entire day was bad, his entire day he was bickering, he was sad, he was gloomy, and then he came and then it came and saved that part of the day, a huge part of the day that I had rued, or I had kind of wasted, I had kind of bickered over. An important thing that we notice here is the rhyming scheme, which is A, B, A, B, because with crow we see the rhyming snow, and with me we see the rhyming tree, with heart we see the rhyming part, and with mood we see the rhyming rude. So it's like A, again we find A here, B in the second line, and B in the fourth line, again A in the first line, A in the third line, B in the second line, and B in the fourth line. So A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. Okay. Also, the figures of speech are important in our discussion. The figures of speech that have been used here are alliteration, then enjambments have been used. What is an enjambment? We need to understand. Enjambments are like the first line carries on to the second line, like the way a crow shook down on me. So the entire idea from the first line is being carried to the second line, right? So this is the idea of enjambment that we have. Also, we find here that the way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. So alliteration would connote to the part that the same vowel sounds are being used. Okay, and this has been used, and the rhyming scheme is wonderful here. It has been written in iambic diameter, like 2 meters have been used, and it's been written in iambic diameter with a single unstressed followed by a stressed, and sometimes alternating with 2 unstressed and then two unstressed and then followed by another stressed. So that is how he entirely frames the poem, and what he tries to mean here is that that his life was sad, his life was in a mess, and somehow he tries to walk on a lonely road, and then looks at the hemlock tree, which is poisonous, which is again a connotation to death, the crow, which is again a connotation to evil, the death, the decay, But somehow the crow, changes its character, and it brings happiness, showers of happiness. So, irony is full in the poem. The poem is full of irony, and as a result it gives back what the poet wanted, that is a moment of happiness, contentment, stasis in his otherwise lonely life. And it somehow helped him to save the part of the life that was already being destroyed by his repeated mourning of the life itself, because he was a man who had changed jobs throughout his life, and didn't have money for quite a large part of his life. And his poems are about the truth that he had seen, and somehow embracing the sadness and moving forward with the sadness. And somehow this poem is also a remembrance of Robert Frost, that worldview of life.